My name is David Harper. I'm a high school science teacher, husband of 10 years, and until recently, I thought I had the perfect marriage. That illusion shattered the morning my wife left for a conference in Chicago, and I received a message that changed everything. Your wife isn't who you think she is. At first, I ignored it. I trusted her. I loved her. But something inside me wouldn't let it go. So I followed the trail. What I uncovered led me to a beachside resort, a hidden affair, and a plan for revenge they never saw coming. I stood at the bedroom door, arms crossed, watching my wife Lisa pack her suitcase with almost obsessive care. 10 years of marriage, and I still found myself captivated by her. The way her auburn hair shimmered in the morning light, how her green eyes lit up with excitement, her grace in every movement. But something felt off. She was going away for 5 days to attend a teacher's conference in Chicago. As a high school science teacher myself, I knew how mundane those events usually were. Cheap coffee, dull lectures, teachers half asleep in folding chairs. Yet here she was, laying out dresses like she was preparing for a fashion show. Are you sure you've got everything? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Lisa glanced up and gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I think so. I just want to be ready for anything. My eyes drifted to the lacy black lingerie she folded carefully into the corner of her suitcase. I recognized it. It was the anniversary set I gave her last month. My heart warmed for a moment. Maybe she still wanted to feel beautiful, for herself, for me. Taking the fancy stuff with her? That had to mean something good, right? Expecting a fancy dinner at the conference? I teased, trying to sound lighthearted. She blushed. You never know. Could be a formal event. She turned away, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. But I noticed she'd taken extra time with her makeup that morning. Smoky eyeshadow. Lipstick she usually saved for date nights. Her hair had been curled into soft, romantic waves. Nothing like the messy bun she usually wore to work. You're really going all out, huh? I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Must be some important folks at this one. Lisa avoided eye contact, adjusting her blouse. I just want to make a good impression. She spritzed perfume onto her wrists, jasmine and vanilla. The scent drifted toward me, pulling memories from the past. Our anniversary. The night she wore that perfume for me, whispering promises in the dark. For a moment, I felt foolish for doubting her. She was my wife, my best friend, the woman I'd built a life with. I needed to trust her. Still, something tugged at the edge of my thoughts. A knot forming in my stomach, tight and cold. Are you all set? I asked, forcing a smile. Lisa nodded, wheeling her suitcase toward the stairs. I'll call you every night, I promise. She stepped closer, wrapped her arms around my neck, and kissed me, longer than usual. Her lips were soft, warm, but distant in some strange way. Her fingers grazed my jaw as she pulled away. I'll miss you, she whispered. I'll miss you too, I said, hugging her tightly. Bring me back something cool. She laughed, a sound that used to feel like sunshine. Now it felt rehearsed. Of course. I love you, I added as she turned to leave. Love you too. I watched from the window as she loaded the suitcase into the car and drove off. She waved one last time before turning the corner. Then she was gone. The silence that followed felt deeper than usual. Heavier. I shook it off, made a cup of coffee, and sat at the dining table with a stack of ungraded exams. Trying to shift gears. Focus. But that uneasy feeling lingered. Lisa had been distant lately, busy, distracted, always texting someone and angling her phone away when I walked by. Late nights at school. New outfits. New perfume. It didn't feel like coincidence anymore. I stared at the untouched papers in front of me, trying to convince myself I was overthinking, that I was being paranoid, that she was still the woman who kissed me at the altar and held my hand when my father passed. Then my phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting a "landed safely" message. Instead, an unknown number stared back at me. I hesitated, then opened it. Your wife isn't who you think she is. Check the guest list at the Palmer Hotel. My blood ran cold. I stared at the message. Read it again. And again. The letters didn't change, but my entire world did. My first instinct was to laugh it off. A prank. A scam. Who would send something like this? But as I sat there in silence, heart racing, I couldn't shake the chill crawling down my spine. For the first time in 10 years, I wondered if I really knew the woman I just kissed goodbye. I must have stared at that text for 5 solid minutes, frozen in place. The words weren't elaborate, just one simple sentence. but they carried the weight of a sledgehammer. Your wife isn't who you think she is. Check the guest list at the Palmer Hotel. My mind immediately fought back, trying to rationalize. This had to be a prank. A scammer fishing for attention, or worse, money. But deep down, beneath the logic and the denial, something inside me twisted. A quiet voice whispered the same terrifying question over and over again. What if it's true? I sat back in my chair, heart pounding hard enough to make my vision pulse. My palms were slick with sweat. I stared at my phone, the sender's number still unknown, still haunting me. I should have deleted the message. Should have laughed and moved on. That's what a trusting husband would do. That's what I would have done a year ago. But lately, trust had felt harder to hold on to. Lisa had changed. Subtly, but unmistakably. She guarded her phone like a diary with 1,000 secrets. Her work schedule had suddenly become unpredictable. Late nights, weekend grading sessions, collaboration with a new teacher, Thomas Lennox, the school's golden boy gym instructor. I used to joke about how every female staff member swooned when he walked by. Apparently, Lisa wasn't immune either. I opened my laptop, fingers trembling as I typed in the name of the Palmer Hotel. It was a luxury place in downtown Chicago, the kind of venue that hosted conferences for educators with budgets much bigger than ours. Lisa had mentioned it a few times in passing, saying it was where the conference workshops would be held. I found the site easily enough and clicked on the Event Registration tab. There it was, a form to check attendees for the Chicago Educators Summit. I hesitated, then typed in her name. Lisa Harper. Clicked Submit. I held my breath. No attendees found matching your search. I stared at the screen, blinking. That couldn't be right. I tried again, this time entering Harper Lisa, then Harper L. Nothing. I double-checked the spelling, the date, the event name. Still nothing. I sat in stunned silence for a full minute. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. This couldn't be happening. Maybe she used her maiden name to register? Maybe the system was buggy? Maybe the message was fake, and I was just letting paranoia get the best of me. Desperate to prove my suspicions wrong, I pulled up our shared digital calendar on my phone. I scrolled to this week. Right there, neatly entered in her handwriting, was Teacher Conference, Chicago, 5 days. But beneath that entry, in much smaller text, something else had been logged. A hidden event, marked as private. I almost missed it. L&T Special Project. L&T. Lisa and Thomas. My stomach clenched. I clicked on the entry. No details. Just those 4 words and 5 overlapping days. Exactly the same dates as the conference. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. My thoughts were spinning, looping over every recent conversation, every smile that didn't feel real, every "I love you" that came too quickly, too rehearsed. I tried to tell myself I was wrong, but it didn't feel like I was wrong. I stood up, pacing the room, then made my way to Lisa's home office. I told myself I was just looking for a conference itinerary. Something, anything, to prove she was where she said she was. I checked her desk drawers. Nothing but lesson plans and student artwork. I opened the cabinet, flipped through files. Still nothing. Then I noticed a thick art history book on the bookshelf. A scrap of paper peeked out near the middle. I pulled the book down, opened it carefully. A folded note fluttered to the floor. Hands shaking, I picked it up and unfolded it. Can't wait for our special getaway. You're my muse. My passion. Yours always, T. The room tilted. My knees gave out, and I sank to the floor. There it was, in black ink and sloppy handwriting. The truth I had hoped I would never see. T was Thomas. It had to be. She hadn't even tried to hide it well. Tears stung my eyes as the air left my lungs. 10 years. 10 years of love, trust, building a life together. And she threw it away for a fling with a man who barely knew the meaning of loyalty. I sat there for I don't know how long. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every part of me wanted to scream, to call her, to demand answers. But another part of me, the calmer, colder part, knew better. I needed proof. More than a note. More than suspicion. I picked myself up, wiped my face, and sat back at my laptop. If I was going to confront Lisa, I had to be sure. And I had to be ready. Because whatever this was, it wasn't just betrayal. It was war. The note still sat on my desk, its cruel little message taunting me with every glance. You're my muse. My passion. It was signed only with a T, but I didn't need a signature. I knew exactly who wrote it. Thomas Lennox. The same smug gym teacher my wife had been working late with for the past few months. Funny how it all suddenly made sense. I stared at the screen in front of me, unsure what to do next. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, each one darker than the last. I was furious, heartbroken, and worst of all, ashamed. How could I have been so blind? But I couldn't act on raw emotion. Not yet. I needed more. More than a note. More than a hidden calendar entry. If I confronted Lisa now, she'd deny everything, twist it, gaslight me into thinking I was losing my mind. No, I needed evidence she couldn't talk her way out of. So, I did what any betrayed husband would do. I started digging. I pulled up Thomas's social media. It wasn't hard to find. He wasn't exactly a private guy. Every other post was a gym selfie or some cliché motivational quote about grinding harder than the excuses. But as I scrolled, I spotted it. A post from yesterday. Time to recharge and find new inspiration. Off to the beach. Hashtag Oceana Resort. Hashtag no distractions. Oceana Resort. My stomach turned. It was 3 hours away, a luxury beach resort I'd once dreamed of taking Lisa to for our anniversary. But we'd never had the money. Teacher salaries didn't exactly leave room for oceanside getaways. I checked the resort's website, confirming its exact location. A gut punch. It lined up perfectly with Lisa's supposed conference dates. And then it hit me. If Thomas had checked in on social media, maybe Lisa hadn't been as careful either. I opened the Find My Device app on my phone and logged into our shared Apple account. We'd set it up together years ago, so we could locate each other if needed. Trust. Irony never came louder. A map loaded. One blinking dot appeared. Lisa's phone. Located at the Oceana Resort. Not Chicago. Not even close. My hands started to shake again. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room, scream, cry, anything, but I didn't. Instead, I picked up my phone and made the one call I knew I could trust. Hello, came a soft voice. Julia, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need you to come over. Now. 10 minutes later, Julia pulled into the driveway. She'd been one of my students once, a brilliant, fiery girl who'd grown into an even more brilliant private investigator. Over the years, we'd stayed close. She called me her mentor. I called her the smartest person I knew. When she walked in and saw my face, her smile disappeared. What happened? I didn't answer right away. I just handed her the note. She read it. Once, then again, jaw tightening. Is this what I think it is? Lisa and Thomas, I confirmed. They're not at a conference. They're at a beach resort. Together. Julia sat down slowly. You're sure? I showed her the digital calendar entry, the missing registration from the Palmer Hotel, the location ping from Lisa's phone, and the social media post from Thomas. Her silence said everything. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I want to catch them. I want her to see my face when she realizes the game's over. Julia looked at me, her eyes cold and sharp. Then let's make sure it's a moment she never forgets. I blinked. You're serious? Dead serious. We're not going to confront her with just a hunch or a couple of screenshots. We're going to catch them in the act. No more lies. No more denials. You deserve the truth, delivered face to face. There was a fire in her voice I hadn't heard in a long time, and something about her certainty gave me strength. Okay, I nodded slowly. But I need your help setting it up. We'll book a room at the same resort, she said, already pulling out her tablet. Under a different name. Something discreet. You'll stay next door to them if we can manage it. I'll bring recording equipment, cameras, whatever we need. We'll document everything. As she tapped away, I watched her work, feeling both numb and electrified. This was real. This was happening. I was going to catch my wife cheating. On camera. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to expose her. Not to the world. Not yet. But to herself. To her lies. To everything she thought she could hide. By the time Julia finished making the arrangements, the plan was in motion. We'd leave at dawn. And by sunset, Lisa would be looking into the eyes of the man she betrayed and realize he'd been watching all along. By the time the sun rose the next morning, I was already dressed, packed, and waiting at the curb with a bag heavier than it should have been. Not because of the clothes or gear Julia told me to bring, but because of the weight in my chest. The kind that tightens your throat and makes every breath feel like betrayal. Julia pulled up in her black SUV right on time. She didn't say much when I got in, just gave me a nod, and we drove. 3 hours on the highway felt like 3 lifetimes. My thoughts never stopped spinning. I pictured Lisa laughing with Thomas, sipping wine by the beach, wearing the very lingerie I gave her for someone else. Each mile closer to the resort was like a fuse burning towards something explosive. We arrived at the Oceana Resort just past noon. It was the kind of place you see in magazines. White walls gleaming in the sun, palm trees swaying in the ocean breeze, couples strolling hand in hand with drinks that cost more than my weekly groceries. I should have felt impressed. Instead, I felt sick. Julia parked the car and turned to me. Remember, we're a couple. Just another happy pair on vacation. Smile when needed, blend in, and don't lose control. We're here to observe until it's time to strike. I nodded, jaw clenched. We walked through the grand lobby, marble floors and cascading chandeliers all around us. Julia did most of the talking at the front desk. Her charm was terrifyingly effective, laughing, flirting with the concierge like she was born for this. The receptionist smiled at us and handed over 2 room keys. Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Room 712. I hope you enjoy your stay. I forced a smile, murmured thanks, and followed Julia to the elevator. As the doors closed behind us, my heart started pounding again. We were getting closer, just 1 floor away from the truth. When we reached the 7th floor, I scanned every door number as we passed. And there it was, room 714. I stopped mid-step. Muffled voices leaked through the door. Familiar ones. Hers. Oh, Thomas, Lisa giggled. That soft, flirtatious laugh I used to think was only mine. Tonight's going to be our most passionate yet. I brought something special. I bet it's that little red number. Thomas growled, his voice low. God, you drive me insane. Lisa purred. Only for you, baby. Poor David has no idea what he's missing. A white-hot rage surged through me, so sudden I thought I might pass out. My hands curled into fists at my sides. My breath came sharp, shallow. How dare she? How dare she mock me like that? Like our 10 years of marriage were just a joke she'd told behind my back. I almost kicked the door down right then and there. I could see it in my mind. Her face going pale, Thomas scrambling like the coward he is. But Julia stopped me. She stepped in front of me, placing a hand on my shoulder. Stick to the plan, she whispered. They're not going anywhere. I nodded, barely. My muscles trembled as I let her guide me to our room. Once inside, I paced like a caged animal. Julia, meanwhile, moved like she was setting up a spy operation. She positioned a small camera aimed perfectly at the hallway and their door, checked her audio recorder, and opened her laptop to sync everything in real time. We're good, she said. Whenever you're ready. I stared at the wall between us and them. I could still hear faint murmurs, the occasional burst of laughter, the sound of a cork popping from a wine bottle. Soon, I said. Very soon. We waited. Every minute stretched out like an hour. I sat on the edge of the bed, bouncing my leg, watching the door. The day passed slowly. I barely ate. Couldn't. My mind replayed their voices over and over again. Poor David. No idea what he's missing. By the time evening arrived, the hallway was quiet. The sun had begun to set, casting a golden glow through the sheer curtains. It should have been beautiful, romantic even. But all I felt was pressure. A deep, rising tension in my chest, ready to snap. Julia looked over at me, reading my expression. You ready? I stood, breathing deeply. My hands were steady now. Calm. Too calm. Yes, I said. It's time. Then let's finish this, she said, grabbing her phone and following me to the door. As we stepped into the hallway, I paused just a few feet from room 714. I lifted my hand. Knocked. 3 sharp raps. The sound echoed down the hallway. Footsteps inside. A shadow moved behind the frosted glass. The handle turned. And then, there she was. Lisa, wearing a silk robe, cheeks flushed, hair tousled. Her eyes met mine. And in that exact moment, time stopped. Her face went pale the instant she saw me. David. Lisa's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. She clutched the edges of her robe as if that could shield her from what was coming. What are you doing here? I tilted my head slightly and gave her a smile. Not the warm kind. The kind that's ice cold and sharp around the edges. I thought I'd surprise you, I said. You know, since you're attending such a prestigious teachers' conference. Her mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Behind her, Thomas stepped into view. Shirtless, hair messy, mouth parted in confusion. For a moment, the only sound in the hallway was the distant hum of the ocean. David. Lisa tried again, but I raised a hand to stop her. "Oh, I'm sure you've got a great explanation," I said calmly. "Can't wait to hear how room 714 at a luxury beach resort plays into your schedule of keynote speakers and educational workshops." Thomas stepped forward, trying to look intimidating in nothing but boxers. "Look, man, this isn't what it looks like." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It burst out of me, dry and bitter. "Really?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife is screwing her coworker in a 5-star hotel room she lied to get to." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. Not anymore. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying because she got caught. "David," she said, voice trembling. "Please, can we just talk about this privately?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough. "Why should we do that? You weren't very private earlier, were you? When you were laughing about how oblivious I am. You didn't know I was on the other side of that wall, did you?" Thomas stiffened. Lisa blinked, stunned. It was sinking in now. I'd been here. I'd heard everything. "You have no idea," she started. "Oh, I think I have plenty of ideas now." People had started peeking out of their rooms. A woman across the hall clutched her robe tighter and ducked back in. 2 men stood near the elevator, watching the show unfold. Julia, always 2 steps ahead, stepped forward from behind me. Her phone was in her hand, angled slightly downward, recording everything. Lisa looked at her in confusion and panic. "Who is she?" "This is Julia," I said. "My friend, and my witness. You know, since you clearly weren't going to tell the truth, I figured I'd bring some backup." Thomas scoffed. "What the hell is this? You spying on us? That's messed up, man." I turned slowly to face him. "You think this is messed up? Try coming home to an empty bed while your wife is here moaning in a hotel suite, pretending it's work. You know what's really messed up? Trusting someone with your life and watching them set it on fire." I pushed past them both, walking into the room. Lisa reached for my arm. "David, please, let's talk. Just you and me." "No." I looked around, taking in the unmade bed, the wine glasses, the lingerie draped over the armchair. "We'll talk, but not the way you think." Julia shut the door behind us. I walked over to the adjoining door that led to our room, room 712, and unlocked it. "I'll be staying next door," I said. "Figured I'd join you on this little getaway, since I already paid for it with my credit card." "You what?" Thomas asked, his voice rising. "You heard me. The room's in my name. This entire floor knows what's going on now. Don't worry, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to give you both a front row seat to what consequences look like." Lisa sat down on the edge of the bed, burying her face in her hands. "Please, David, please don't tell the school. We'll lose everything. Our jobs, our reputations." "You should have thought of that before," I said coldly. "But I'll make you a deal." Thomas and Lisa both looked up, desperate. "I won't say a word to the school," I continued, "if you each sign a written confession. A detailed, signed, and dated account of your affair. Full disclosure. No lies. Just the truth on paper." "You're blackmailing us," Thomas snapped. "No," I said. "I'm giving you a way out. You want me silent? Then I need leverage." "That's not blackmail, it's insurance." They hesitated. Lisa was already cracking, her eyes red, her hands trembling. "Fine," she whispered. "I'll do it." Julia pulled the pre-printed statements from her bag. She'd come prepared. They signed. No hesitation. No dignity left. I took the papers, folded them neatly, and slipped them into my suitcase. Then I turned to the door. "I'm done talking tonight. We've got the rest of the week to discuss what betrayal really feels like." And with that, I left them in stunned silence, walked into my room, and locked the door behind me. The storm had broken, but the eye was still ahead. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't want to. My mind was too sharp, too focused, too fueled by the image of Lisa's face when she opened that door and saw me standing there. That flash of shock, guilt, fear, it played on a loop behind my eyes. While they squirmed in the room next door, I was planning the final act. By morning, the tension between the adjoining walls was thick enough to choke on. I knew they hadn't slept either. The silence told me everything. No laughter, no whispers, just pacing and hushed arguments. Good. Let them sweat. At precisely 9 a.m., I knocked. No response. I used my key card. After all, I was still the one who paid for the room, and walked in with Julia behind me. Lisa and Thomas were huddled on the bed, the remnants of their perfect little getaway unraveling all around them. Their eyes were red, their faces pale, like they'd seen a ghost. I was better than a ghost. I was reality. "Good morning," I said, far too cheerfully. "Hope you both slept well. We've got a busy day ahead." Thomas sat up. "What are you talking about?" I replied. "It's time Emily got brought up to speed." At the sound of her name, the color drained from his face. "Emily," he croaked. "No, you can't." "Oh, I already did," I interrupted, glancing at my watch. "She'll be calling in about now." As if on cue, Julia's laptop chimed. "Incoming video call." Emily's name appeared on the screen. Lisa gasped. Thomas reached out. "David, don't, please." I clicked answer. Emily's face filled the screen, confused, tired, hopeful. "David?" she asked. "What's going on? Why are you?" Her words froze when she saw them behind me. Thomas, shirtless. Lisa, shaking. "Emily," I said softly, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I thought you deserved the truth. Lisa and Thomas have been here, at this resort, for the past 2 days. Together. Not at a seminar. Not working." She blinked. Once. Twice. Then her lips parted, and the truth sank in. "Thomas," she whispered, her voice breaking. What are you doing there?" Thomas couldn't speak. Lisa buried her face in her hands. "They lied to you," I continued. "To both of us. And we believed them. But I figured it was time their little fantasy world collapsed." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You said you were in Detroit, visiting your mom." I believed you." Thomas tried to speak, but nothing came out. "I'm sorry, Emily," I said, meaning every word. "You didn't deserve this." She nodded slowly. "I need to go. I need time." And just like that, she ended the call. The room fell into silence. Lisa looked up at me, her eyes raw. "Why are you doing this?" "Why?" I echoed. "Because you made me a fool. Because you laughed behind my back. Because you took 10 years of love and tore it to shreds for a man who can't even face his own wife." Thomas stood up. "We said we were sorry. We signed your stupid confession. What more do you want?" I walked to the window, opened the curtains, and let the morning light pour in. Then I pulled out my phone and held it up casually. "You know," I said, "I've been thinking a lot about the truth lately. How it hides in shadows. How it rots in silence. But when you shine a light on it, people start to see clearly." "What are you talking about?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. I looked her dead in the eyes. "I'm talking about this." I tapped the button on my phone. She blinked in confusion. Then her phone started buzzing. So did Thomas's. Buzz. 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 Notifications flooding in like a tidal wave. And then Lisa gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What did you do?" I turned the screen toward them. It showed the live feed I had quietly started broadcasting the night before. Our confrontation. Their confession. Their shame. Live. To the school's private faculty and parent group. Hundreds of people were watching. "I told you I wouldn't report it to the school," I said calmly. "And I didn't. But you did." Thomas lunged forward, rage overtaking him. "You bastard. You ruined us." I didn't flinch. "No. You did that all by yourselves." Lisa collapsed onto the bed, sobbing. Thomas punched the wall and stormed into the bathroom. Julia, silent the entire time, stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder. I ended the stream and slipped my phone into my pocket. "I think I've lost my appetite," I said, turning toward the door. "But breakfast's on me. You too, enjoy what's left of your vacation." And just like that, I walked out, leaving them behind in the wreckage they created. By the time the resort staff brought out breakfast on silver trays, the damage had already been done. I sat on the balcony of my room, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching the waves crash against the shore. It was peaceful, eerily so, a sharp contrast to the chaos I had left behind just one floor away. From here, the world looked normal. But I knew that down the hall, 2 people were facing the wreckage of their carefully hidden affair being dragged into the daylight. And I wasn't done yet. Around mid-morning, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Lisa standing there. Her eyes were bloodshot, her cheeks blotchy from crying. She looked small, nothing like the confident woman who once lit up every room she walked into. "How could you do this to me?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "You've ruined everything." I stared at her for a long moment, then calmly set my coffee down on the table. "No, Lisa, you ruined everything. I just made sure no one could pretend it didn't happen." She stepped inside without asking, pacing the room like a caged animal. You humiliated me, David. The whole school saw that video. Parents, teachers, the principal. Do you know what's going to happen when we go back? You mean if you go back? I said. She froze. What does that mean? I folded my arms. There's an emergency school board meeting scheduled. They want all three of us there. You, Thomas, me. She sank into the chair across from me, her shoulders slumping. This is going to destroy my career. Funny, I said. You weren't worried about that when you were laughing about me behind my back. She looked up at me, tears filling her eyes. I was unhappy, David. I felt invisible. You were always so busy with your students, your experiments, your science fairs. And Thomas, he made me feel alive again. Don't, I snapped. Don't you dare try to spin this into something noble. If you were unhappy, you talk to your husband. You don't lie, cheat, and run off to a beach resort with the school's walking cliché of a gym teacher. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But, is there a chance, any chance, we could fix this? Before I could answer, there was another knock at the door. This time it was Thomas. He looked rough, hair unkempt, eyes sunken. His usual cocky swagger had vanished. We need to talk, he muttered. The school board is asking questions. Someone from the district office called me this morning. They know everything. Lisa turned to me, panicked. David, please. You have to help us. If we lose our jobs, our licenses, our reputations, it's over. I stood up slowly, the air between us charged with tension. I don't have to do anything, I said coldly. You two made your choices. Now you live with them. Thomas's jaw clenched. You think you're better than us? You're not. You're just some sanctimonious nerd who got lucky with a hot wife and didn't know how to keep her happy. I stepped toward him, not flinching. No, Thomas. I'm the guy who trusted her, who loved her, who gave her a life she clearly didn't value. And unlike you, I didn't lie, sneak around, and blow up two families just to feel alive. He took a step back, eyes burning with resentment. Lisa rose from the chair, voice cracking. What are you going to do, David? I exhaled slowly. I've already spoken to my lawyer. You'll both be served divorce proceedings next week. She gasped. No, David, please. We've built a life together. We have friends. A community. This doesn't have to end like this. Yes, it does, I said. Because the person I married doesn't exist anymore. You killed him the moment you chose him over us. Lisa's shoulders collapsed. Thomas swore under his breath and stormed out. She stayed a moment longer, looking at me like she didn't recognize who I was. Is there really nothing left between us? She asked. I shook my head. Nothing that survived what you did. She turned and walked out, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt free. I closed the door gently behind her. That afternoon, I drove back home with Julia. The air in the car was quiet, but not heavy. I could breathe again. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't focused on what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I still had, and what I was going to rebuild. By the time the resort staff brought out breakfast on silver trays, the damage had already been done. I sat on the balcony of my room, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching the waves crash against the shore. It was peaceful, eerily so, a sharp contrast to the chaos I had left behind just one floor away. From here, the world looked normal. But I knew that down the hall, two people were facing the wreckage of their carefully hidden affair being dragged into the daylight. And I wasn't done yet. Around mid-morning, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Lisa standing there. Her eyes were bloodshot, her cheeks blotchy from crying. She looked small, nothing like the confident woman who once lit up every room she walked into. How could you do this to me? She asked, her voice hoarse. You've ruined everything. I stared at her for a long moment, then calmly set my coffee down on the table. No, Lisa, you ruined everything. I just made sure no one could pretend it didn't happen. She stepped inside without asking, pacing the room like a caged animal. You humiliated me, David. The whole school saw that video. Parents, teachers, the principal. Do you know what's going to happen when we go back? You mean if you go back? I said. She froze. What does that mean? I folded my arms. There's an emergency school board meeting scheduled. They want all three of us there. You, Thomas, me. She sank into the chair across from me, her shoulders slumping. This is going to destroy my career. Funny, I said. You weren't worried about that when you were laughing about me behind my back. She looked up at me, tears filling her eyes. I was unhappy, David. I felt invisible. You were always so busy with your students, your experiments, your science fairs. And Thomas, he made me feel alive again. Don't, I snapped. Don't you dare try to spin this into something noble. If you were unhappy, you talk to your husband. You don't lie, cheat, and run off to a beach resort with the school's walking cliché of a gym teacher. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But is there a chance, any chance, we could fix this? Before I could answer, there was another knock at the door. This time it was Thomas. He looked rough, hair unkempt, eyes sunken. His usual cocky swagger had vanished. We need to talk, he muttered. The school board is asking questions. Someone from the district office called me this morning. They know everything. Lisa turned to me, panicked. David, please. You have to help us. If we lose our jobs, our licenses, our reputations, it's over. I stood up slowly, the air between us charged with tension. I don't have to do anything, I said coldly. You two made your choices. Now you live with them. Thomas's jaw clenched. You think you're better than us? You're not. You're just some sanctimonious nerd who got lucky with a hot wife and didn't know how to keep her happy. I stepped toward him, not flinching. No, Thomas. I'm the guy who trusted her, who loved her, who gave her a life she clearly didn't value. And unlike you, I didn't lie, sneak around, and blow up two families just to feel alive. He took a step back, eyes burning with resentment. Lisa rose from the chair, voice cracking. What are you going to do, David? I exhaled slowly. I've already spoken to my lawyer. You'll both be served divorce proceedings next week. She gasped. No, David, please. We've built a life together. We have friends. A community. This doesn't have to end like this. Yes, it does, I said. Because the person I married doesn't exist anymore. You killed him the moment you chose him over us. Lisa's shoulders collapsed. Thomas swore under his breath and stormed out. She stayed a moment longer, looking at me like she didn't recognize who I was. Is there really nothing left between us? She asked. I shook my head. Nothing that survived what you did. She turned and walked out, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt free. I closed the door gently behind her. That afternoon, I drove back home with Julia. The air in the car was quiet, but not heavy. I could breathe again. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't focused on what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I still had, and what I was going to rebuild. 3 weeks after that unforgettable confrontation at the resort, I found myself standing in front of the Millstone Unified School District building, wearing the only suit I owned. The same one I got married in. The irony wasn't lost on me. The parking lot was packed. Parents, teachers, even students had shown up. I spotted Lisa's car parked near the far end. I didn't expect to speak to her today. I had nothing left to say. Everything that mattered had already been said or exposed. Inside the boardroom, the tension was suffocating. I took a seat near the front, clutching the folder of statements, screenshots, and evidence Julia and I had collected. Not because I needed to convince anyone, but because I was done staying quiet. When my name was called, I stood and faced the board, the community, and my colleagues, many of whom had supported me since the live stream went viral. I didn't come here for revenge, I began. I came here for the truth. I spoke about my 10 years of service, the hundreds of students I had taught and mentored, the trust I'd built with parents, and the programs I had poured my soul into. I didn't mention Lisa or Thomas by name. I didn't need to. Everyone already knew. What I did mention was character. How it's not defined when everything's easy, but when your entire life crumbles and you still choose to stand. When I sat down, the room erupted in quiet applause. I didn't smile. I just nodded, grateful, steady. Lisa spoke next. She was visibly shaken, her voice barely carrying through the microphone. She tried to spin it, said she made a personal mistake, but that it shouldn't cost her professional future. She begged for mercy, for understanding. Then Thomas took the podium. He shrugged his way through a half-hearted apology and tried to downplay everything as consensual and blown out of proportion. His arrogance hadn't died. It had just gotten louder, more desperate. When the board returned from deliberation, silence filled the room. Mr. Harper, the chairwoman said, "Your actions, though personal in nature, demonstrated integrity, restraint, and professionalism during a profoundly difficult time. You will retain your position with full support from this district." A ripple of applause swept through the room. As for Mrs. Harper and Mr. Lennox, she continued, her tone colder. Your conduct has violated the ethical standards of this institution. You are hereby placed on administrative leave, pending reassignment to another district, if deemed appropriate. Lisa broke down in tears. Thomas just stared ahead, jaw locked, as if he still couldn't believe he was facing consequences. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I simply stood, gathered my folder, and walked out with my head held high. By the time I got home, my phone was overflowing with messages. Parents, students, old colleagues, all of them reaching out. Not with pity, but with pride. One message stood out. Mr. Harper, you're the reason I want to be a teacher someday. You taught me how to be brave. Thank you. It was from Zoe, one of my science team students. That message hit me harder than anything Lisa ever said. 2 days later, the school hosted a rally in my honor, something organized by the PDA and a few very determined seniors. There were signs, speeches, even cake. I smiled more that day than I had in months. Lisa showed up, standing across the street, watching. She didn't come over. She didn't need to. Our chapter was closed. A month passed, then another. Life began to settle into something resembling normal. I threw myself into teaching, coaching the science team, and even accepted an invitation to speak at a state-level education conference. Somewhere along the way, I received an offer, a position at a prestigious magnet school across the country. Better pay, more resources, a clean slate. I accepted it. The day before my move, I was packing the last of my boxes when the doorbell rang. Lisa. She stood there, holding a small box, photos, mementos from our marriage. Her eyes were glassy. I thought you might want these, she said quietly. I took the box. Thanks. She hesitated. I've changed, David. I'm trying to be better. I just wanted to know, is there even the smallest chance? I looked at her, the woman I had loved, the woman who had broken me. No, I said gently. Trust doesn't grow back where betrayal took root. Not for me. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I understand. As she turned to leave, I reached behind me and handed her a sealed envelope. A letter. I wrote it the day after the board meeting. Thought it might give you closure. She took it with trembling hands and walked away. The next morning, I stood on my porch, suitcase in hand. Ready. That's when I heard it. Laughter, cheers. A group of my students and neighbors appeared on the lawn, holding signs. We'll miss you, Mr. Harper. And integrity matters. Zoe handed me a scrapbook filled with messages, photos, and drawings. I nearly broke. As I hugged them goodbye, I glanced across the street. Lisa stood there, watching from a distance. Our eyes met for a moment. No bitterness, just finality. Then I got into my car, started the engine, and pulled away from the only life I'd known. And I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I was finally ready to move forward, towards something better, stronger, and entirely mine. As I drove farther from the life I once knew, a quiet clarity settled in, the kind that only comes after you've been shattered and forced to rebuild piece by piece. Looking back, I don't just see betrayal. I see lessons, hard ones, but necessary. I learned that love isn't just about feelings. It's about choices, daily ones, to stay, to fight, to communicate. And when those choices are replaced with secrecy and lies, love can die quietly while trust bleeds out unnoticed. I learned that silence, while comfortable, can be dangerous. That sometimes the most dignified thing you can do is speak up, even if your voice shakes. To anyone who's been hurt, especially those who've loved deeply for years, I'll say this: protect your peace. Don't stay where you're only valued in memory. You deserve honesty, respect, and the kind of love that doesn't hide behind locked screens and late-night excuses. And perhaps most importantly, never think it's too late to begin again. Whether you're 30 or 60, healing is still possible. New beginnings still wait for those brave enough to let go of what broke them. I did, and I'm still walking forward. One step, one truth at a time.